The Earth's sky was calm before the alarms rang from every global station. Ships larger than any mountain appeared in orbit and blocked the sun like shadows from ancient legends. People ran to bunkers, news anchors froze mid-sentence, and even military leaders stared at the sky in silence. These were not just visitors, they were conquerors from the stars. Among the chaos, the United Earth Assembly tried to send messages of peace, but there was no reply. Instead, glowing orbs floated down over major cities, scanning buildings and people. When they exploded into beams of pure energy, entire districts vanished in seconds. Earth fired back with everything it had, but their weapons bounced off invisible shields. One of the invaders was the Zeraline Empire, a galactic kingdom ruled by warrior queens and sacred bloodlines. They called it a testing, not a war. Earth had been placed under ancient alien law, one that demanded balance through battle or bonding. Humanity did not know the rules, and the aliens did not explain them. In the middle of this madness, a single man was taken, not a soldier or a leader, but a translator named Cole Merrick. He had worked with alien language fragments before, decoding star maps and forgotten ruins. When the Zerelians read his records, they claimed him under Code Rule 49A. Earth had lost the battle, but they could still avoid full destruction. He agreed to a binding ritual. Cole woke up in a glowing chamber, with walls that pulsed like breathing skin. A circle of armored women stood before him, each taller than he expected, and more radiant than anything he had seen. Their eyes studied him like he was a weapon or a jewel. One stepped forward and introduced herself in perfect English. She was Princess Calera, first heir of the Emerald Spires. She told him that under Zerelian law, peace could only be restored if one chosen human bonded with royal blood, but not just one. Because of Earth's stubborn resistance, the council required a full triad union. That meant marriage to all three ruling daughters. Lyra's sisters, Vera the Warrior Flame, and Saraloon of the Frozen Crown would join. Him, in sacred binding, Cole thought it was a mistake. He was just a researcher, not a hero. He wasn't even the most charming person in his lab, but Calera said the law had already decided. His DNA matched the spark required to awaken. Something inside them, something only a soul from Earth could trigger. The binding would give power to the Empire and protect Earth from judgment, outside the royal ship. Earth's forces prepared for a final stand, but the alien queen declared a pause in attacks. She told the planet that their fate now rested on the will of one man. Across every screen, Cole's confused face appeared, and people shouted in shock. His name spread faster than light, becoming a symbol of both hope and fear. When he was brought before the council to decide, he didn't answer right away. The princesses waited, unblinking. His mind screamed to run, to fight, to wake up from this madness. But then he saw the burning cities on a screen behind them, and he understood. If he said no, Earth would become ash. If he said yes, he would marry 3 powerful alien women and change history. He agreed to the binding ritual. Cole stood motionless inside the ceremonial chamber as the golden light shifted and began to glow brighter. Alien priests wearing silver robes circled him while chanting in a language only he partly understood. Strange symbols floated in the air and wrapped around his body like glowing mist. Each step he took forward echoed through the marble floor. Like a heartbeat from another world, Princess Calera moved gracefully toward him, her emerald armor reflecting the strange light. She held a golden staff shaped like a tree branch, its tip glowing with soft blue fire. Her long hair floated slightly as if caught in silent wind. When she spoke, her voice was calm but powerful. She asked him to stand with strength, not fear. The chamber opened wider, revealing 2 more figures walking forward. One was Virea, the second princess, covered in crimson armor that seemed to flicker like flames. Her eyes burned with intensity, her stride confident like a warrior ready for war. The other was Saraloon, draped in ice blue silk and polished silver plating, her skin pale and her aura cold but graceful. Together, they completed the sacred triangle of the Zerelian royal line. Cole could barely process the beauty or weight of the moment. The 3 alien princesses were symbols of power across galaxies, trained in battle, politics, and diplomacy. Now, they were standing before him, expecting to be bound in a ritual deeper than marriage. His legs felt weak, but his mind pushed forward. He had to do this for Earth. A glowing platform rose from beneath the floor. It held a ring crafted from stardust metal, formed by energy itself. Kalira explained that it was not a symbol, but a living object. It would tie their minds, their hearts, and their futures. Once worn, there would be no turning back. Their lives would be shared across space and time. The alien priests began the chant again. Cole was guided to the center by soft, invisible force. The princesses stepped into the points of the triangle, surrounding him. They reached out their hands together, touching the ring. Cole hesitated, but when his fingers brushed it, the entire room trembled. A burst of energy rippled outward, shaking even the walls of the ship. Memories not his own flooded his thoughts. He saw Zarelian wars, royal childhoods, ancient beasts, and moments of pure sorrow, but also joy, courage, and laughter. The ring was showing him who they were, testing if he could carry them. His knees buckled, but he stood tall again. The princesses watched him with quiet approval. Then came the final phase. A crown-shaped beam of light formed above them, casting their shadows into a circle. The ring floated between their hands and spun faster. Cole was told to speak the ancient words of unity. He didn't know the language, but the ring guided his tongue. When the last word left his mouth, the ring split into 3 and flew into their hearts. Each princess gasped as their armor changed colors, glowing with new energy. Cole felt a heat rise in his chest, then a sudden calm. He was no longer just human. He was now connected to a bloodline older than his planet's oceans. The binding was complete, and the royal law had been fulfilled. On the surface of Earth, the alien warships stopped charging their cannons. Screens across the globe showed the sacred light erupting from the Zarelian flagship. People wept, cheered, or fell to their knees in relief. The war was over not with guns, but with a vow. Kalira looked at him first and smiled. Her voice was softer now, more personal. She said he had done what no general could. Virea nodded, her arms crossed, but her eyes holding respect. Saraloon said nothing, but her gaze had warmed just slightly. They had accepted him not just as a tool of peace, but as something more. Cole was taken to a private royal chamber afterward. He stood before a mirror, seeing the glow still lingering on his skin. He didn't know what tomorrow held or how his life would change. All he knew was that Earth was safe, and his heart was now part of 3 others. He had married into an empire. The days after the ritual were filled with new laws, strange customs, and endless ceremonies. Cole was not only a husband now, but also a symbol of interstellar peace. Every step he took was watched, studied, and recorded. Royal attendants followed him closely, whispering instructions and warnings in his ear. He felt more like an exhibit than a man. He had been moved to the royal palace orbiting the twin moons of Zarelia Prime. The palace was carved into the side of a floating crystal mountain, the endless corridors that changed shape depending on who walked through them. It was alive with magic, energy, and forgotten technology. Cole barely slept as he tried to adjust to his new life. Each of the princesses had their own territory inside the palace. Kalira's halls bloomed with emerald vines and glowing plants that responded to emotion. Vera's wing blazed with warmth, fire dancing silently inside marble columns. Saraloon's domain was silent and cold, filled with mirrors and silver mist. Cole was expected to visit each of them, learn their ways, and bond further. His first visit was with Keliera. She led him through her gardens, letting him touch the living flowers that could sing soft melodies. She explained her role in managing the diplomacy of the empire, her years spent calming wars with words instead of weapons. She asked Cole what humans feared most. He told her it was being forgotten. She smiled gently and said memory was sacred to her people. That's why their plants absorbed stories and turned them into color and song. She touched a flower near him and it glowed violet, playing a quiet tune. It was the sound of his voice when he said yes to the marriage. The garden had already remembered him. Later, he walked through Vera's wing. She was sparring with energy blades. Against 3 captains at once, her movements sharp and precise. She waved him over and handed him a small practice blade. At first he refused. Then she insisted. She wanted to see what the human heart looked like in motion. He'd barely lasted 5 seconds before she disarmed him with a smirk. "You move." "With too much caution," she said. "A warrior loves with the same courage he fights." Cole didn't know how to respond, but her words stayed in his mind long after he left. She was fierce, yes, but not cruel. She just believed in strength above all else. And she wanted him to find that strength too. The last visit was with Sarah Loon. Her room was silent and still, like a temple at midnight. She sat on a floating chair. Of glass, eyes closed, arms resting on silver threads of light, she did not speak at first. She only opened one hand and invited him to sit. When he did, his mind was flooded with visions. Memories passed between them without words. He saw her youth, her pain, her duty as guardian of time and memory. Her silence was not coldness. It was the weight of generations carried in stillness. When she finally spoke, her voice was no louder than a whisper. "I do not need your words. I only need your truth." Cole nodded and felt something inside him shift. That night, he returned to his shared chamber, where the walls adjusted to. His mood, he stood on the balcony, looking down at the twin moons spinning in slow harmony. The stars felt closer than ever. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't trained for politics. Yet here he was, husband to 3 princesses, protector of peace, the center of a galactic prophecy. He didn't ask for any of it, but he was determined not to fail. The next morning, he was summoned by the High Matron of Zorelia. A new challenge had risen. The rival house of Threxery, bitter over the union between human and royalty, had declared the ritual invalid. They demanded a trial by tradition, an ancient test to prove the worth of the bond. If Cole failed, the marriage would be undone and Earth would fall. He was given 1 day to prepare. The day of the trial arrived, with thunderclouds swirling above the royal palace. Lightning crackled in slow motion across the sky, as if the very stars were watching what would happen next. Cole stood alone, on a circular platform suspended above an endless drop. Alien crowds filled the balconies, silent and curious. No weapons were allowed, no guides, no allies. A voice echoed from the ancient pillars. It belonged to the speaker. Of laws, a creature made of crystal and memory, he announced the challenge. Cole would enter the trial of balance. It was designed not to test strength or speed, but the harmony between him and the 3 royal princesses. If they truly shared a bond, he would survive. If not, he would vanish into the void. Cole had no armor, no tools, just the mark of unity, glowing faintly on his chest. The trial began with the platform breaking into 3 floating paths. Each path was lit with a different color: green for Kalira, red for Viarea, and blue for Sarah Loon. The trial demanded he walk all 3 paths. Facing illusions drawn from their souls, he stepped onto the green path first. The moment his foot touched it, the world around him transformed. He stood in the middle of a diplomatic war council, surrounded by shouting alien leaders. Kalira stood at the center, calm and graceful, but this version of her ignored him. Had to convince her to trust him, or the room would erupt into war. Cole tried to speak, but the others talked over him. He walked straight to Kalira and placed a hand on the table. With simple words, he reminded her of the garden, the memory flowers, and the vow they had made. She looked into his eyes and slowly nodded. The illusion shattered like glass, and the green path reformed ahead of him. The second path was red. Fire rose all around as he entered a battlefield of blazing light. Viarea stood in the center, surrounded by fallen warriors. She had a sword in one hand and a wound across her chest. When she saw Cole, she shouted at him to prove his will or turn away. He picked up a fallen blade and walked into the flames. The battle was not real, but the pain was. Every step burned his skin. Every swing of the blade felt heavier than the last. Viarea watched from the edge, her arms crossed. When Cole fell to his knees, she appeared beside him and asked why he kept. Fighting. He answered with only one word. US. She smiled, and the flames disappeared. The red path cleared. The final path was blue, and it led into silence. There was no sound, no light, only cold mist swirling around his feet. A statue at the center, her eyes closed. Cole approached slowly. He tried to speak, but no voice came out. Remembered her words. Truth, not noise. He stood beside her and closed his eyes too. In the silence, their thoughts merged. He saw her. Loneliness, the centuries of isolation, the duty that stole her joy. He showed her his fear of failing, of being small in a galaxy so large. She reached out and touched his hand. Her eyes opened, and the silence warmed. The path lit up beneath them in glowing blue. When he returned to the center, the platform rose again, whole and shining. The crowd erupted in gasps, and even the speaker of laws paused in wonder. Few had ever passed the trial of balance. Fewer still had done it as an outsider. The ring on Cole's chest flared with golden light, and the three princesses stepped forward to stand at his side. Kalira bowed first, and declared her bond unshaken. Viraya raised her sword in salute. Saralune placed her hand on Cole's shoulder and spoke softly. You are worthy. The speaker of laws announced the trial complete, the bond proven, and the law satisfied. The rival house of Threxery had no choice but to withdraw their claim. The sky above the palace cleared as if the stars themselves approved that night. A celebration was held across the Zerelian worlds. Fireworks made of starlight danced in the sky. Cole stood between the three princesses, no longer an outsider, but something more. A symbol, a husband, a key to something larger than peace. He didn't know what came next, but he knew this was only the beginning, and the galaxy was watching. The celebration across the Zerelian Empire lasted for 3 full rotations of their twin suns. Cole was no longer just a human guest or a political symbol. He was now known across star systems as the Bound One, the first outsider ever accepted by the Royal Triad. His face was carved into crystal statues. Even alien children learned his name in school. Yet peace is never permanent in a galaxy ruled by pride and power. While Zerelia rejoiced, dark signals traveled through secret channels. The Threxery. Noble family may have accepted the trial's results in public, but in private they were planning something far more dangerous. Their shame demanded vengeance, and Cole stood at the center of it. The three princesses were aware of the tension. Kalira began reinforcing diplomatic treaties with nearby systems, strengthening their alliances. Viraya trained harder, even designing new battle drills for her elite guards. Saloon spent long hours alone, meditating near the crystal core of the palace. Cole, however, was kept out of the details. They wanted to protect him from what might come, but Cole didn't want to be protected. He wanted to help. He began studying Zerelian history, ancient law, and planetary politics. Using translation tech and help from his advisors, he started to understand how the Empire truly worked. It wasn't just about strength or beauty. It was about balance, trust, and proving one's place through action, not birth. One evening, while walking through the lower gardens, he found a strange device hidden beneath a marble fountain. It looked like a sphere made of dark metal with glowing red lines. When he touched it, it flickered and displayed a countdown. Security alarms rang instantly, and guards swarmed the area. The device was a bomb. The attempt on his life had failed. But it was a clear warning. Someone wanted him dead, not just removed, but erased. The princesses arrived moments later, fury and fear etched into their faces. Kalira ordered the palace locked down. Viraya began hunting for spies. Saralune traced the energy signature of the bomb to a distant moon called Drethvarn. Cole insisted on going with them, but they refused. It was too dangerous. The mission would involve infiltration, possible combat, and tracking enemies through a lawless mining world. But Cole didn't back down. Said he had passed their trials, earned their rings, and survived betrayal. If this was his fight too, then he had to face it beside them. Kalira stared at him in silence before nodding. Then you will go as part of us, she said. The royal engineers crafted a special suit for Cole, blending human design with Zerelian armor. It was light, flexible, and responsive to his thoughts. It carried no weapons, but its defenses could repel direct energy. Blasts. He looked into the mirror and saw something new. He saw a husband, but also a symbol of unity. The journey to Drethvarn took only hours in a royal warp vessel. The moon was broken and harsh, covered in dust storms and shadowy craters. Ship landed in silence, far from the outposts. They moved through the canyons like whispers, guided by Saralune's tracking systems. Viria scouted ahead while Kalira monitored signals from orbit. They entered an abandoned refinery built into the side of a jagged cliff. Inside, the air was thick with static, and every echo felt like a threat. Then came the ambush. Mercenaries in black armor dropped from the ceiling and opened fire. Viria deflected bolts with her blade. Kalira raised energy shields. Siralune shattered the lights with a mental pulse. Cole stayed low. But when one of the attackers broke through the line, he moved without thinking. Using a defensive maneuver Viria had taught him, he rolled to the side and activated his armor's kinetic shock. The attacker flew backward into the wall. Cole stood up, surprised by his own reaction. The princesses saw it too. They reached the control room at the heart of the facility. Inside was proof of Thyrexery's plans, explosives, forged documents, and messages plotting future attacks. Kalira copied everything into secure files. Viria destroyed the equipment. Saralan left a message written in light across the wall. The bond is real. Break it, and we will rise together. As they left the moon behind. The stars outside the window looked sharper than before. Cole no longer felt like a visitor in their world. The success of the mission to Drethvarn spread quickly across the Zarelian Empire. News feeds, public forums, and royal channels all displayed Cole standing beside the three princesses inside the burning wreckage of the Thyrexery base. Citizens across different planets bowed toward his image. He was no longer seen as a foreigner. With luck, he was a royal with earned loyalty. Inside the palace, things began to change. Guards greeted him with respect instead of formality. Servants offered smiles rather than stares. More importantly, the royal council, once cold and doubtful now, invited him to their strategy sessions. Kalira spoke his name with pride. Viria slapped his back like a warrior brother. Saraline simply placed her hand on his each morning. Without words, Cole adapted quickly. His training continued under Vira's guidance. She made him practice defense, reaction, and reading the battlefield. Though she mocked him for every slow movement, her praise came through her eyes. With Kalira, he learned how to speak like royalty, how to read the flow of politics, and when to remain silent. She taught him how power could be used gently. Saraline taught him something deeper. She guided him through memory chambers, helping him walk through history without getting lost. She showed him moments when peace nearly broke and how truth could shape the future. Her lessons had no voice, only light and feeling, yet Cole understood everything. These moments shaped him into more than a man. He became a symbol of shared strength, but peace never rested long. A strange message arrived through the forbidden space lanes. It came from a forgotten empire known only in warnings and legends, the Nihari Dominion. They were once conquerors of entire galaxies before vanishing into the black. The message was clear. They had seen the union of human and Zarelian, and they called it an insult to ancient law. The princesses met in secret, pulling Cole into the heart of the war chamber. The message had no demands, only a declaration. In 3 days, a Nihari judgment ship would arrive. If the bond was judged unworthy, both Earth and Zarelia would be marked for removal. No negotiations. No appeals. Just cleansing through fire and void, Cole sat in silence, feeling the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. The princesses looked to him, not with fear, but with shared purpose. Kalira stepped forward and said the bond must be shown, not defended. Viria wanted to meet them in open challenge. Siralune said nothing, but her voice echoed in his mind with quiet strength. We stand because we believe. The Empire prepared for the arrival. Shields were raised, cities evacuated, and fleets moved into orbit. Cole returned to the same ritual chamber where the bond was first sealed. This time there were no chants, no flowers, no celebration, only resolve. He stood with the three princesses, hands locked, eyes closed. A beacon of unity was activated, sending a signal through. The stars? On the third day, the Nihari arrived. Their ship was larger than anything Cole had ever seen. It looked like a floating mountain wrapped in chains of starlight. It did not speak in sound. Instead, it sent waves of emotion, testing hearts instead of words. The bond was placed under trial not through war, but through memory. Cole was pulled into a mental storm. He stood in visions of his past, his fears, his failures, but he did not stand alone. Kalira's calm steadied him. Freya's fire gave him courage. Sarah Loon's silence gave him focus. Each moment tested them, but each one passed. The bond held strong. The storm broke with a flash of gold across the sky. The Nihari did not speak again. They turned their ship slowly and vanished into deep space. The threat was gone. The galaxy exhaled. Cole fell to one knee, overwhelmed. The princesses surrounded him, not as royalty, but as partners. Kalira helped him stand. Vera laughed and called him a true warrior. Sarah Loon placed her forehead against his and whispered, "You are no longer of Earth alone." That night, for the first time since their union, they stood together beneath the stars without fear, and Cole finally felt like he belonged. A season passed since the Nihari left the system, and the galaxy watched Zorelia with renewed respect. The bond between Cole and the three royal daughters had not only survived, had become a beacon across empires. Peace councils sent envoys. Even former rivals bowed their heads when Zorelian emissaries arrived. But deeper changes were happening beneath the surface. Cole was no longer just adapting to this world. He was becoming a part of it. His body had started responding to the royal bond in strange ways. His senses sharpened. His endurance increased. His dreams filled with visions of distant stars and forgotten languages. The bond had begun unlocking parts of him shaped by ancient forces beyond Earth. Kalira began testing his new perception. She brought him to diplomacy events where unspoken gestures carried more weight than words. He saw through lies, sensed shifts in emotion, and offered responses that made even stubborn leaders pause. Kalira smiled with approval and whispered that he was learning to lead without raising his voice. Vera tested him through challenge. She pushed him harder in the sparring halls, this time with real weapons and unpredictable terrain. She no longer treated him like a student. She moved as if facing an equal, and each time they clashed, sparks flew. After one duel, she offered him her blade for a moment. He held it high, and the guard saluted him without command. Sarah Loon tested his mind. She led him into deeper memory wells, vast pools of ancestral thought stored in ancient crystal. Together they walked through echoes of the Empire's origin, through wars, betrayals, and reconciliations. Cole did not flinch from any of it. When he emerged, she called him the echo that chose to stay one night. As twin moons aligned in the sky, the Empire celebrated the Bondlight Festival, a tradition that honored sacred unions. This year, it centered on Cole and the princesses. Billions across systems tuned in as the four stood on the grand platform. Lights danced above them in shifting shapes, telling the story of how one human became the soul of three. During the ceremony, each princess gave Cole a final gift of affirmation. Kalira presented a scroll written in royal ink, declaring him a true heir by unity. Virea placed a ceremonial guard's emblem on his shoulder, signifying he had earned warrior honor. Sarah Loon gifted him a memory crystal carved with the phrase, "Bound not by birth but by belief." When it was Cole's turn, he stepped forward and spoke without translation. The words flowed naturally, shaped by the bond itself. He told them he came from a small blue planet filled with doubt and division. But through their love, their trials, and their truths, he had become something greater. Not a ruler, not a symbol, but a partner to something far more powerful than war. His voice echoed across cities, stars, and systems, but as peace rose higher, so did the shadow beneath it. Deep in the edges of known space, another faction stirred. The Nihari had left, but their message had inspired whispers. A coalition of extremist worlds called the Fractured Reach began to grow. They believed unity between species was unnatural. To them, Cole was a threat to tradition and purity. A spy within the palace brought news that a silent fleet was being built, faster than Zarelia's defense systems could respond, stronger than any recorded before. Their target was not the Empire itself, but the palace. Their goal was to remove the symbol. To shatter the bond at its heart, the royal council met in secret. The princesses stood at the table with cold focus. Kalira demanded preparations be accelerated. Vera ordered full mobilization of elite units. Sterlun stared at the star map and said, "They come not to fight, but to break belief." Cole stood quietly, listening to each word. Then he stepped forward and placed his hand on the center of the table. "Then let them come," he said. "Let them see who we are when we stand as one." The final storm was coming, and Cole was ready to face it. Asterisk. The warning alarms echoed through the crystal corridors of the palace as the stars above flickered. Unnaturally, the Fractured Reach had arrived. Their ships moved in silence, shaped like knives cutting through the void. They didn't announce their intentions. They didn't send a message. Their hatred came like a storm that had already made up its mind from the highest tower. Cole stood beside the three princesses as defense shields lit the sky in brilliant arcs. Fighters scrambled into position, and royal guards prepared for breach. Kalira wore her emerald armor, her eyes steady. Varea's flame armor burned with rage, her hands gripping twin blades. Sterlun stood silent, her presence like still water before a quake. Cole wore the armor designed for him by all three. It had Kalira's wisdom woven into the seams, Varela's fire in the joints, and Sterlun's memory in the circuits. He was not a warrior by birth, but he had become one through choice. And now that choice stood between peace and destruction. The attack began with orbital strikes aimed at the palace walls. The shields held for only moments before fragments rained down like fire. Cole led the charge through the central hall, fighting beside the guards, using his suit's energy pulse to shield fallen allies. The princesses did not remain behind. They fought at his side. Virea was the first to breach the enemy line. Her blades danced in crimson arcs, her roars shaking the walls. Kalira used tactical drones and traps to trap enemy squads in loops of confusion. Sterlun disabled their communications, sending ghost signals that turned their own forces against each other. Cole moved between them, defending, striking, guiding, surviving. The Reach forces were more brutal than expected. They didn't care about life or land. They only wanted the bond destroyed. One enemy commander shouted, "You've tainted the stars with your filth," but Cole didn't flinch. He raised his hand and light burst from the Unity core on his chest, sending the commander flying back into the flames as the battle raged. The enemy's final weapon emerged, Fusion Warbeast, half machine, half living rage. It smashed through the eastern wall, roaring loud enough to shake the palace roots. The guards fell back. The princesses prepared to strike, but Cole stepped forward alone. His armor responded to his heartbeat, growing brighter with each step. Stared into the eyes of the beast and remembered everything. Earth's fragile beauty, Zarelia's strength, Sterella's kindness, Varela's fire, Cerella's silence. He was all of it, not a fragment, not a guest, a union made real. The core on his chest exploded with light wrapping around him like armor made from stars. He charged forward. The beast met him head-on. The impact shattered the floor, sending waves of force through the entire structure. But Cole didn't fall. He held his ground, pushing with all he had. With one final pulse of unity from the core, the beast cracked open and collapsed. Its heart melted into light. The battle was over. Smoke and silence filled the palace. The enemies had fallen. The last of the Reach ships scattered into the stars, defeated by unity, not domination. Cole fell to one knee, his armor dim, breath heavy. The princesses rushed to him, each placing a hand on his shoulders. Together, they helped him rise. That evening, the palace was repaired by song weavers, and light returned to every corridor. The people gathered to honor what had been saved. Cole stood before the crowd, holding the hands of his wives. He was no longer just a man from Earth. He was the bridge between worlds, a symbol not just of peace, but of love, forged through fire. Kalira gave him a crown of leaves that never faded. Bria pressed her blade to his chest and called him brother of warriors. Saraloon handed him a star map, etched with the path they would take next. Then the three of them spoke together, their voices joined. He is not our husband by law, he's our partner by soul. The stars above Zorelia sparkled brighter than ever before, and the galaxy knew a new legend had been born.